Good afternoon and welcome to my series on principles of marketing. And before we start the next chapter, as a disclaimer, would like to let you know this lesson is for education, information, and review purposes. It's not to take credit for the intellectual property of the book. The intellectual property of the book itself goes to the publisher Cutler and Armstrong. All right. That out of the way, let me go back to chapter 10 here. Now, I want to tell you that if you haven't seen, if you haven't seen the previous videos, I recommend that you see them. That way, you can understand what's going on in the book, because the material is cumulative and is foundational, which means the material from this chapter is based upon the previous chapters. Just like, for example, you don't build a house on the top, starting from the top. You build a house starting from the bottom and up, not from the top down. You understand? All right. With that being said, we're in part 3 of the book called Designing a Customer-Driven Strategy in Mix. All right. We're on chapter 10. The title is Pricing and Understanding and Capturing Customer Value. Now, with that being said, let's talk about what this chapter is about. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. From the chapter preview, we now look at the second major marketing mix, that's tool pricing. If effective product development, promotion, and distribution sows the seeds of business success, effective pricing is the harvest. Okay. So the pricing is what you get after you've shown the value of the product. You understand? The value of the product goes to the customer, and then the pricing value of the pricing goes to the company. And that's how it goes in terms of a marketing value in that order. Firms successful at creating customer value with other marketing mix activities must still capture some of this value in prices they earn. In this chapter, we discuss the importance of pricing, dig into 3 major pricing strategies, and look at some internal and external considerations that affect pricing decisions. In the next chapter, chapter 11, we'll examine some additional pricing considerations and approaches. Let's examine, for openers, as the book would say, let's examine the importance of pricing in online retailing. So we're going to talk about pricing and online retailing. Okay. This is a case example about Amazon, right? Remember something. Amazon and Walmart are your 2 biggest retailers. Amazon is almost strictly all online, versus Walmart's mostly a brick and mortar in-person store. Both of them have websites, obviously, especially Amazon. But Walmart also, you can purchase online too. And that's how it works. Okay. Now, I will leave it to you to read the case example about Amazon. Just understand that about Amazon, that Amazon and Walmart have different pricing strategies based upon the medium that they choose. If you have a medium that's more expensive, then then you have to you have to price a little bit more, or you have to have loss leaders, like we told you, certain things that get you in the store, but other things that make up the difference. And if you haven't noticed with Walmart over the past few years, is that Walmart, at least over the past 3 years that I know of, Walmart has had an option where you could buy groceries in store. Also, I believe Amazon has that too as well. So they have slightly different strategies. So I'll let you read about that, but just understand that that's how the pricing structure goes. So if you can get items for cheaper, you sell it for cheaper. If you're using a medium where it's cheaper to buy and sell, or at least to buy the items, the prices will be cheaper. Now, as far as the two mediums, usually online is a cheaper way of doing it than in person. Uh, Mainly because in person you have more employees. Now, online also has significant costs in terms of IT management, server storage, and then you still have warehouses and stuff, but it's done differently. Okay, you still have some physical things in terms of warehouses, and there is inventory going in and out of the store often. But most of it, in terms of the transactions, is done through the medium, which is either online or in person. All right. That being said, let's move on to the next section. So that was just the introduction. Now, let's talk about the three objectives for this chapter that we need to learn. First one, we want to answer the question, what is price? And discuss the importance of pricing in today's fast changing environment. Now, that is simply what is a price. Objective number two, identify the three major pricing strategies and discuss the importance of understanding customer value perceptions, company costs, competitor strategies when setting prices. That is the major pricing strategies. We want to identify and define the other important external and internal factors of the firm's pricing decisions. That is, other internal and external considerations affecting price decisions. All right, now let's start with our first objective, which is what is a price. Start from the beginning. It says companies today face a fierce and fast changing pricing environment. Value seeking customers have increased pricing pressure on many companies. Thanks to recent economic woes, the pricing power of the internet and value driven retailers such as Walmart. Today's more frugal consumers are pursuing spend less strategies. In response, it seems that almost every company is looking for ways to cut prices. Yet cutting prices is often not the best answer. Reducing prices unnecessarily can lead to lost profits and damaging price wars. Now, here's the real concern. It can cheapen a brand by signaling to customers that price is more important than customers' value that a brand delivers. Depending on the demographics, some people look at something that's cheap as not being very good. Instead, no matter what state of the economy, companies should sell value, not price. Did you catch that? Companies should sell value, not price. In some cases, that means lesser products at rock bottom prices, but in some cases, it means persuading customers that paying a higher price for a company's brand is justified by the greater value they gain. That's basically what can happen. Now, here's the natural question. What is a price? In the narrowest sense, price is the amount of money charged for a product or service. Okay? Most people are familiar with what a price is because they bought things before. But if we want to speak about this more precisely and more in depth, we can definitely do that. More broadly, price is a sum of all values that customers give up to gain the benefits of having are using product or service, or are using a product or service. That's what I'm saying. Historically, the price has been a major factor affecting buyer choice. So what's the major factor? Price has been a major factor affecting buyer choice. In recent decades, non-price factors have gained increasing importance. However, price also still seems or still remains one of the most important elements that determines a firm's market share and profitability. Price is the only element in the marketing mix that produces revenue. All other elements represent costs. Right? So you have two things. In finance and accounting and business, there's two things. There's revenue and there's cost. Revenue refers to the money obtained before expenses are calculated. Cost refers to the price, or what's the financial giveaway or exchange to get what you're looking for. Okay? It's like if you buy something, it will say the cost in terms of the currency, such as dollars, pounds, euros, yen, yuan, whatever it is. Okay? The price is the amount of currency is the price. Such if I say how much for a computer, it's for example $1,000, right? $1,000 is the price. Do you understand? You pay the $1,000 and then you get the computer. That's the idea. Price is also one of the most flexible marketing mix elements. Now, the reason is because it can change temporarily or permanently. Usually temporarily. Unlike product features and channel commitments, prices can be changed quickly. So that's the reason. Can be changed quickly. At the same time, pricing is the number one problem facing many marketing executives at many companies that do not handle pricing well. Some managers view pricing as a big headache, preferring instead to focus on other marketing mix elements. However, smart managers treat pricing as a key strategic tool for creating and capturing customer value. Here's the thing. If you're targeting the right demographic, pricing is not the issue. It's the value that's the issue. Why? If you look at a product and you say, okay, it costs this amount of money, X dollars, whatever it is, right? If if you're getting that amount or more, meaning, for example, let's say you buy a computer for $1,000, right? If you're getting $1,000 of value or more, and you don't mind, assuming that you have the budget for it, you don't mind paying the $1,000. See what I mean? It all depends on the value you're giving. Now, for people who have less to spend, of course, they can't afford such a price. But if you have the right demographic who's willing to pay that price or more, then you'll know that that price is not the real issue. It's the value that they get for the money. Prices have direct impact on a firm's bottom line. A small percentage improvement on price can generate a large percentage increase in profitability. Why is that? Because profitability is revenue minus costs. Okay, so it's how much you make versus how much you spend. It's the profit. So if you make more, your profits are more. Pretty simple, right? Okay. More importantly, as part of the customer's overall value proposition, price plays a key role in creating customer value and building customer relationships. Well, instead of running away from pricing, says an expert, savvy marketers are embracing it. Here's the thing, if you know your product is worth a certain amount, You're not worried about the pricing. Second of all, if you know your product is within the market average, you don't worry about the pricing. If you have the right demographic, you don't worry about the pricing. See the trend? You don't worry about the pricing. Okay. Now let's talk about major pricing strategies. The price a company charges will fall somewhere between one that is high to produce and demand, and one that's high to produce any demand, and then one is that is too low to produce a profit. Okay, so if there's lots of demand, the price is higher. Supply and demand, basic concept in microeconomics and business. Greater demand, greater the price. The lesser the supply, the greater the price. And vice versa is true too. The lesser the demand, the lesser the price. See where that's going? All right. Now, there we go. All right, and the figure below it will summarize the major considerations in setting price. Customer perceptions of the product's value set the ceiling for prices, meaning the value that the customer sees of it. If the customer perceives the product's price is greater than its value, they the product okay wait sorry let me say that again for you. If the customers perceive the product's price below, or excuse me, in this case greater than its value, they will not buy the product. Right? Product price set the floor for prices. Product cost sets a floor for prices. So obviously you have to charge at least at a minimum of whatever it costs to produce the product. Right? If the company prices the product below its costs, the company's profits will suffer. And setting its price between these two extremes, the companies must consider several internal and external factors, including competitors, strategies, prices, and the overall strategy, marketing strategy and mix, the nature and market and demand. Okay, so let's look at this. Now, figure 10.1 suggests three major market pricing, that is customer values-based pricing, cost-based pricing, and competition-based pricing. Okay, let's talk about those three. In the end, customer will decide whether a product's price is right. Price decisions, like other marketing mix decisions, must start with the customer value. When customers buy a product, they exchange something of value, the price, with something of value, the benefit of having or using the product. Effective customer-oriented pricing involves understanding how much the consumers place on the benefits they receive from the product and setting a price that captures this value. All right, so that's what it is. Now, more specifically, with customer value-based pricing, it uses buyers' perceptions of value, not the seller's cost. So, what does the customer think the value of the product is? Which is its key to pricing. Value-based pricing means a marketer cannot design a product and marketing program and then set the price. The price is considered along with all the other marketing variables before marketing programs are set. Right? So if this product is only worth, for example, $100, then your cost to produce that product, each unit of the product should be no more than $100. Actually, should be less than $100. Actually, the way it works usually is usually do something called a 15% rule. claiming to have normal profitability, you need to profit at least 15% of the revenue. Of course, I said revenue would be profit. So the total revenue you bring in minus the cost, profit should be at least 15% of that. The difference should be at least difference between the price and the cost should be 15% of the revenue. So revenue is how much money you're taking in minus how much is going out. But if you consider just the gross part of it, not the net, which is including the cost, your profit should be 15% of the gross. Okay? That's what it is. For all the money coming in, not including the cost, profit should be 15%. Okay? That's how it works. Value-based pricing means that the market cannot design a product and marketing program and then set the price. Remember that. Price is considered along with all the other marketing variables before the marketing program is set. Just to reiterate that. Now with that said, let's continue on. Remember that you need to compare value-based pricing with cost-based pricing, which we'll talk about as well. First, we're going to talk about customer value-based pricing first. Although costs are an important consideration in the setting prices, cost-based pricing is often product-driven. Company designs what it considers to be a good product, adds up the cost of making the product, and sets a price that covers costs plus the target profit. Marketing must then convince buyers that the product's value at the price justifies its purchase. If the price turns out to be too high, the company must settle for lower markups or lower sales, both resulting in disappointing profits. What we're aiming for is total amount of profit. First, what you do when you look at the total amount, you take the profit, you take the profit margin, or otherwise known as the margin, which is the revenue minus the cost. It's margin. You take the margin as a percentage, and you multiply by how many. So the margin is how much is in profit you get per sale, multiplied by how many sales. And the other way is you can take the percentage of the revenue, which is the margin. Percentage of the revenue. That's the profit margin percentage. Then you multiply. So you have the profit margin total amount. Or you could say, okay, per unit, what's the profit margin? It's, for example, 10%. Okay, 10% times the revenue times the how many sales. Okay, will give you the total amount of profit made, not the profit margin. Profit margin can be expressed either as a percentage or as a whole amount, which means percentage on the revenue, which is a gross amount, or it could mean the actual profit itself. Okay? Remember, it's multiplied by the amount of sales. If you have less sales, you have less revenue, therefore you have less profit. Okay? Pretty straightforward so far, right? Value-based pricing reverses the process. The companies first assess customer needs and value perceptions. Then it sets the target price based on customers' perceptions of value. The targeted value and price drive decisions about what costs can be incurred and the resulting product design. As a result, pricing begins with analyzing customer needs and value propositions, and the price is set to match the perceived value. It all boils down to price is set to match the perceived value. The key word is perceived. It's how the customer sees it. It's important to remember that good value is not the same as low price. For example, Steinway piano and a Steinway piano costs a lot. To those who own one, Steinway is a great value. Right? Its value is based upon the benefits of the product, price compared to the benefits. It's the benefits of the product itself. Now, if you say if it's a good buy, now it would be benefits compared to price. Benefits being the numerator and price being the denominator. Right. Now, let's talk about considerations in setting price. Just to make it clear. First, we start with customers' perceptions of value. Inside that, you have a price ceiling, and no demand is above this price. Then you go to other internal and external considerations. Those being competitive strategies and prices, marketing strategy, objectives, and mix, and the nature of the market and demand. Then you go to the product cost, which is the price floor. No profits below this price. So, it's more like no revenue below this price. But yes, also meaning you can't set your price below the cost. Because if you do, you won't have any profit at all. Okay? That's what it is. Companies often find it hard to measure the company value customers will attach to its product. For example, calculating the cost of ingredients in a meal at a fancy restaurant is relatively easy. But assigning value to other satisfactions such as taste, environment, relaxation, conversation, and status is very hard. Such value is subjective and varies both from different consumers in different situations. So those are the intangibles, okay, that a customer will get from it. You can affect the intangibles, but you can't control it. I mean, you can provide the best customer service that you can possibly provide, but ultimately it is the opinion of the customer which matters. Still, consumers will use these perceived values to elevate a product's price, so the company must work to measure them. Sometimes companies ask consumers how much they would pay for a basic product and for each product added to the offer. Um, or a company might conduct experiments to test the perceived value of different product offers. According to the old Russian proverb, there are two fools in every market, one who asks too much and one who asks too little. So you can see how that there's a difference. Ask too much is the price is too high. Ask too little, the price is too low. If the seller charges more than the buyer's perceived value, the company's sales will suffer, right? Because the price is too high. If the seller charges less than the product, its product sellers will sell very well, but they produce less revenue, and they would if they were priced at the level of the perceived value. Let's talk about some definitions here. Let's talk about good value pricing and value under pricing. So, first one is good value pricing. That is offering the right combination of quality and product service for a fair price. Okay. Now, if you think about that, it's basically if you bought somewhere. Sorry, let me put this here so you can see it better. Oops. you went somewhere in the store and bought something, you often think, okay, I have a budget, how much I want to spend. And then you look for the best deal. Well, what you're looking for, what's the cheapest price I can get it for, according to the benefits that I need. Now, you may find something cheaper, but it doesn't give you all the benefits you need, therefore. Is this something you want to use? That you're something you're going to buy? And that's basically what it is. Basically, it's offering the right combination of quality and good service at a fair price. So, just as a reiteration. Now, in many cases, this is involved introducing less expensive versions of an established brand name products. So that's one way they do it. To meet tougher economic times and more frugal customer spending habits, fast food restaurants such as Taco Bell and McDonald's offer value meals and dollar menu meals. Armani offers less expensive, more casual Armani exchange fashion. Alberto Culver Tresemme hair care line promises a salon look and feel at a fraction of the price. Let me see if that is still recording because it's still recording. Okay, good. Yep. Okay, good. And other examples, every car company now offers small, inexpensive models better suited for the strapped customer's budget. In other cases, good value pricing has involved redesigning existing brands to offer more quality for a given price or the same quality for less. And there's one way of doing that, which is sourcing from a supply chain where you can get it for cheaper. You get your materials for cheaper, your logistics process is cheaper, and your overhead internally is cheaper. You see what I'm saying? So, some companies even succeed by offering less value but at rock bottom prices. Remember, it's value compared to price. Or in this case, features and benefits compared to prices. For example, Ireland's Ryanair, Europe's most profitable airline over the past decade. This was as of 2012 when this book was published. Appears to have found a radical pricing solution. Make flying free. Okay, here we go. That's an interesting one. Before long, Ryanair promises more than half of its passengers will pay nothing for their tickets. Remarkably, the airlines already offers virtually free fares to one-fourth of its customers. What's the secret? Ryanair's frugal cost structure makes even the most cost-conscious competitor look like a reckless spender. Okay, that's something pretty clever. In addition, however, Ryanair charges for virtually everything except for the seat itself. From baggage, check-in, the seat back advertising space. Once the air flight attendants hawk everything from scratch card games to perfume and digital cameras and to their captive audience. After arriving at some out-of-the-way airport, Ryanair will sell you a bus or train ticket into town. The airline even gets commissions from sales of horse rental cars, full rooms, ski packages, and travel insurance. Despite Ryanair's sometimes pushy efforts to extract more revenue from each traveler, customers aren't complaining. Most of the additional purchases are discretionary, and you can't beat those outrageously low prices. An important type of good value pricing at the retail levels is what they call everyday low pricing. That's EDLP. That's an acronym. Now, EDLP involves charging a constant everyday low price for or with few or no temporary price discounts. Retailers such as Costco and furniture seller room and board practice EDLP. The king of EDLP is Walmart, which practically defined the concept. Except for a few sales items every month, Walmart promises everyday low prices on almost everything it sells. In contrast, high to low pricing involves charging higher prices on an everyday basis by running frequent promotions to lower prices temporarily on selected items. And then the purpose of that is to get more customers to come into the store as a loss leader. Department stores such as Kohl's and Macy's practice high-low pricing by having frequent sales days, early bird savings, and bonus earnings for star credit card holders. Some about value-added pricing. For value-added pricing, rather than dropping its prices for venerable Stag umbrella brand to much cheaper imports, Purim's successfully launched umbrellas with funky designs, cool colors, and value-added features, and sold them at even higher prices. Well, let's see how they did it. Let's talk about that. Okay. So, value-added pricing doesn't mean simply charging what customers want to pay or setting low prices to meet competition. Instead, companies adopt value-added pricing strategies, which is rather than cutting prices to match competitors, they attach value-added features and services to determine their offers to support higher prices. So what's the experience of it? If you have a better experience with it, you're probably going to pay more for it, right? Okay, so that's the same kind of thing. It's like if you go to different types of restaurants, they're not all cheap restaurants, right? You have different niches, okay? Actually, not even niches, but segments. So you have like cafes is one segment. You have regular, let's say, family restaurant, and then you have fine dining. Three different segments. Right? So for each segment, you have a different pricing structure, and that's the difference. And the person who's going to a fine dining establishment is going to pay more for it because they have a better experience and better quality, plus better, higher value for the product. Okay? So it is. Now, we have a case example about Panera Bread. They're pretty much a high-end sit-down restaurant, and prices are higher, but the quality is higher. Supposedly. It almost feels like some sort of gourmet restaurant, but not like a fine dining. More of a fast food style, bakery style. It's also a dine-in as well. Okay? And the ingredients, food is supposed to be better as well. Now, I encourage you to read the case example, so that way you can understand exactly how they did it. But when you're focusing on quality and user experience, you can charge more, and people will be willing to pay more because they see the value. Okay, let's move on. talk about cost-based pricing. Now, cost-based pricing is setting prices based on the cost for producing, distributing, and selling the product plus a fair rate of return for effort and risk. And that's basically the market. Okay, so there's different ways of calculating that. So the first part of the cost-based pricing is the internal, which refers to the producing of the product, the distribution, and then the selling. The second part of it is what's called fair rate of return. It refers to the markup or the profit. So suppose it costs, I don't know, for example, $100, right? You say, okay, I want to make more than $100. That's just breaking even, meaning there's no profit, no loss. It's called breaking even. And then what happens is you say, okay, based upon that $100 in their cost, you want to come up with a percentage or a flat amount, depending on how you look at it. So it could be a cost for every $100. It could be a certain percentage of the $100, or it could be a flat amount. And normally, with the percentages, it's normally 15% standard amount. For every $100, it's $15. All right, now we need to do it this way because we need to figure out the cost of an item. Okay, because first of all, how do we know what to charge? How do we know what to charge? We need to figure out the cost of providing this product or service. What we do is we say, okay, for us to make it, we need to calculate what's our profit goal. We want to make, for example, 15% profit, 20% profit, 25% profit, whatever it is. I said, okay, that's going to be our rate of return. Normally, you see, the reason why I don't think a flat amount is a good idea is because the total amount from that you have now, the cost should be fixed cost for the most part. But when you consider the percentage is always the percentage. That part doesn't change. So it's another way of calculating. Just instead of saying, okay, revenue, percentage on revenue, you say, okay, so the markup from the cost equals what I should charge. You know what I'm saying? So the revenue refers to what you charge, right? Cost is how much does it cost to operate it, and your profit. Okay, so what we want to do is you say, okay, this is our cost. Then say, okay, it costs us $100, but we want to make 15%. So then we do the math. 100 plus 15% of 100. That's, the total is 115. That's what they have to charge for us. Right, that's what it is. Now, the cost base, you want to consider everything. Producing, distributing, and selling the product plus, okay, that's the cost base. And then also, finally, for the profit, you consider the rate of return. Pretty straightforward, right? So, when you consider the company's costs, you can see it clearly as an element for its pricing strategy. And the lower the cost, the less of the price you need to charge. And the opposite is true too. Okay. And some companies such as Ryanair and Walmart, they work to become the low-cost producers in the industry. Companies with lower costs, I said before, can set lower prices. So lower costs with lower prices. Result in smaller margins, but greater sales and profits. So the margin is a percentage. Well, it's either the percentage of the revenue or the amount of, or you can say the total amount of profit per item. That's the margin. However, the other companies such as Apple, BMW, and Steinway intentionally pay higher costs so that they can claim higher prices and margins. For example, it costs more to make a handcrafted Steinway painting than it does a Yamaha production, but the higher cost can result in higher quality, justifying the eye-popping $72,000 price for the piano. Prices is to manage the spread between costs and prices. Now, the spread is the difference between something in terms of numbers, and how much the company makes for the customer value it delivers. Let's talk about types of costs. One is you have your fixed costs, like I told you before. So costs, you have two types. You have fixed and you have variable. Fixed costs are also known as overhead, like I told you before. Costs that do not vary within production or sales level. For example, a company must pay each month's bills for rent, heat, interest, and executive salaries, whatever the and whatever the company's output. Variable costs vary directly with the level of production. Okay? So it depends on how much you produce. If you're producing the same amount every month, then your costs are the same because you have to consider per unit how much does it cost to produce that one unit. Okay, for example, it costs $10. Okay, whatever, it's $10. So let's say one month you produced 1,000, next month you produced 10,000. Although the first month has less cost than the second month, because the second month you produced 10 times as much. So because you produce less and sold less, that means that your total amount of profit gain is less as well. So the cost, meaning the cost for producing the item. And that's one example. Okay? Now the total costs are the sum of the fixed and variable costs for any given level of production. Okay? Now the fixed cost would be your overhead, that's basically like utilities and salary. For the most part, that's going to be very, it's going to be almost the same amount. Right? Variable cost depends on how much they decide from month to month to produce. That can change. Those are variable costs. Okay? Now, when we consider the total costs, I know this sounds pretty basic, but this is a matter of definition. That is the sum of the fixed and variable costs for any given level of production. Okay? Management wants to charge a price that will at least cover the total production costs at any given level of production. The company must watch it closely. The company must watch its costs carefully as it costs the company more than its competitors to produce and sell similar products. The company will need to charge a higher price or make less profits, putting it at a competitive disadvantage because your competition is making it cheaper than you. Just like over the past few years, American companies were selling things But Chinese companies, for example, were selling it for cheaper. That's the advantage of Chinese company. Why? Because they're able to source the information and not the products and labor for much cheaper. However, they did it. They did it. So that's how it was part of the cost. That's what it costs. Right? So this is pretty straightforward, right? Now let's talk about costs at different levels of production. To price wisely, management needs to know how much it costs, how it costs vary when different levels of production. For example, suppose Texas Instruments built a plant to produce 1,000 calculators per day. Um, on the figure below, it shows typical short-run coverage cost curve. Um, it shows the cost per calculator. If high TI's factor produce only a few per day. Right? So if you look at the total cost of producing X amount of items, the unit cost is what amount that it takes to produce all those items divided by how many units. Right? So if, for example, suppose I make coffee, right? Let's say I make 100 coffees. Right? I want to know the cost per coffee. I need to divide it by how many coffees. You see? Pretty easy, right? That's basically what it is. The total production cost would be, for example, producing 100 coffees. In this case, producing 1,000 calculators per day. Now, here's another thing. Average costs will increase. If average costs increase because the plant becomes inefficient, then the total cost increases as well. Average cost is also known as the unit cost. It's two terms that mean the same thing. If so, and then there's another consideration. Every plant that produces things can only produce a certain amount given the space. Suppose you had a bigger plant, you have more space to produce more, right? So that's what it is. There's one more cost to consider, which is called opportunity cost. That is, if it was clear that you could have a bigger plant because you have a greater demand, and you don't get the bigger plant to produce more, that means that your opportunity costs also come up as well. Just keep that in mind. Now, excuse me. Now, for example, if Texas Instruments believed it could sell 2,000 calculators a day, that should consider building a larger plant. Like I told you, the plant would use more efficient machinery and work arrangements. So that means the unit cost would be cheaper because they're more efficient. So the unit cost of producing 2,000 calculators per day would be lower than the unit cost of producing 1,000 units per day. So per unit, it's cheaper. Right? Now let's move on to the next part. Let's see if I can get a drink of water here. I might just take an intermission just for a few minutes. Let's get the idea. You have a smaller plant, you produce less items, right? You can only sell as much as you can produce, right? If you're less efficient, right, the cost per unit increases. Okay? Also that as well. Now, um, unit cost of producing 1,000 units per day is shown as a long run average cost curve. Just like this. It's basically like saying a rate of something. Just like this. Suppose I could buy 10,000 units at X price or 100,000 units at Y price. The ones for 100,000 units at Y price gives me a better deal because it's cheaper per unit at 100,000 than it is at 10,000. Now, uh, so the total amount made when you produce more, assuming that you have a demand to fill all 100,000, for example, is more. But depending on the efficiency and other factors in the pricing structure, it's possible that the actual profit margin is actually less. So, for example, let's say profit margin. So if we look at two types of things that you produce, right? One profit margin, let's say, is 20%. The other one is, let's say, 15, right? One that's making 20%, right? The profit margin on some items are more. So what the company does is it says, okay, I just want to make more revenue. Even though the profit margin is less, for example, on 100,000, but because they're selling 90,000 more, if you look at the difference between the two, right? Let's say it's 5% less. Let's say you're making let's say for example, $5 less. Right? Now because it's 90,000 more, it's $5 times 90,000 is the total revenue. Okay? So you have to look at the total revenue. And if you're more efficient, also that means the cost goes down as well because it's how many units can be produced over time. It's efficiency. Okay, in terms of production, there's different factors that considers efficiency, but in terms of production, what we're talking about. So that's basically what it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few minute intermission. Feel free to take a stretch, get some water, maybe a snack, and I'll be back in a few minutes or so. Alright, welcome back. Hopefully you got some water, something to drink. Let's resume. Now let's talk about cost as a function of production experience. Right? For example, you have the case example of Texas Instruments. They make calculators. Suppose TI or Texas Instruments runs a plant that produces 3,000 calculators per day. If TI gains experience of producing calculators, it learns how to do it better. Workers learn shortcuts and become more familiar with their equipment. With practice, work becomes more organized, and TI finds better equipment and production processes. With higher volume, TI becomes more efficient and gains economies of scale, which means it can produce more. That's a key idea, economies of scale. As a result, the average cost tends to decrease with accumulated production experience. Thus, the average cost of producing the first 100,000 calculators is $10 per calculator. When the company has produced 200,000 calculators, the average has fallen to $8.50 after its first accumulated production experience doubles again to 400,000. The average cost is $7. This drop in the average cost with accumulated production is called the experience curve or learning curve. So it's just like this, right? Technically, if you break it up in micro factors, basically the first 10,000 was this 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So for every 10,000 units, or each time that you changed a unit, how much was it? Okay. So let's say the first time you made 10,000, next one you made 30,000. Let's just say you changed the next production line to 50, 70, or 90, and then now it's 100. Each one now has its own rate. Just like every day a stock, for example, a stock, right? Every day either goes up or down. This is increasing revenue, but also increasing revenue because of decreased costs based upon increasing efficiency. So the idea is the greater the efficiency, the lesser the cost on average, means the greater the profit margin. Okay. Now, okay, so we have the experience curve. That means it's how many you produce over time. What happens to the expenses? It's experience curve or learning curve. So the idea is that in the ideal situation is that in the beginning, sorry, as you produce more, you become more efficient, and the cost per item is cheaper. Now, if it's the opposite, that means just the opposite, meaning if you're producing more, but you're not becoming more efficient. That means your profit margin will stay the same, meaning per item profit margin. Now, some companies have built successful strategies around the experience curve. However, a single-minded focus on reducing costs and exploiting the experience curve will not always work. Experience curve pricing carries over major risks. Okay, first of all, the aggressive pricing might give the product a cheap image. Okay, so this is from a marketing standpoint. That might be the problem. See, you need to make it unique. Whenever you price it, you have to communicate value in such a way that you show that the product is worth the value of the product is more, not less. If you have a product that's much cheaper, but you can show this is like a limited time discounted price, but you get the same value. Of course, people say this is a great deal. Problem is that if you do it too often, perception may change from this is might just go from this is a great deal to, well, the price is really cheap, therefore the item is cheap. And the implication of the word cheap means that cheap in quality, not just in price. So that's the risk. The strategy also assumes that competitors are weak and not willing to fight it out by meeting the company's price cuts. Finally, while the company is building volume under one technology, the competitor may find lower cost technologies that start at prices lower than those of the market leader. So that's what's called a loss leader. Meaning you're selling an item the below break-even cost, okay, which means you're selling it you're selling it at a loss instead of at break-even. Or the reason why they do that is only on certain items just to get people in the store. Okay. Now remember, just as a reminder, experience curve, otherwise known as a learning curve, is a drop in the average unit price per unit production cost that comes with the accumulated production experience. That's what it is. Now, let's talk about cost plus pricing. That is the markup pricing, otherwise known as a markup. That's adding a standard markup to the cost of the product. And that will determine the markup which is the profit margin on the product, will determine on what the company feels is appropriate for what they're trying to gain for a goal. So suppose their goal is 15%. Well, then they're going to increase the price 15% more than what the cost of acquiring the product or service is. Right? When you consider all the overhead, etc., you add another whatever the percentage is. So it can be a percentage of the cost, or it can be a flat amount above the cost, depending on how you want to calculate it. So the simplest pricing method is cost plus pricing or market pricing. Remember, that's adding a standard markup to the cost of the product. When we say markup, literally that's why they say up, is because it means it increases the cost of the item, or the price. Sorry, not cost. Well, it is price to the consumer, but increasing the price of the product. All right. So that's pretty straightforward. None of this is not really rocket science, right? For example, just like this, I sell you a phone. You're a reseller. You sell to. I'm the supplier. You're the buyer. I sell you this phone for $700. You want to resell for a profit. So what do? You have to sell it for more than $100. What you do is you say, How much money do I want to make? Okay, that's going to be the markup. So it's going to be the $100 plus how much you want to make is the total price to who you're reselling it to. That's all it is. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult at all. Now, here's some accounting ideas, things, okay, market pricing. So we have a variable cost plus our fixed costs. Then, so we have those, variable plus your fixed. Add those together, right? Then we have the expected units, and then we have that. Then we have our revenue. So that's total cost is your variable plus your fixed. That's one category. The other one is your revenue refers to is the unit price times the sales. Give me your revenue. Profit, as I said before, is the revenue minus the costs. Okay, so for example, this is one example, right? Manufacturer cost per toaster is given by the following. That's basically would be basically the revenue minus cost. Oh, sorry, if we're saying cost, so that would be variable plus fixed uh, divided by how many units is price per unit. So as they show here, unit cost equals the variable cost plus the fixed cost divided by unit sales equals X plus whatever it is. Okay, so that's the unit cost. Fixed, sorry. Yeah, it's a fixed cost divided by the unit sales is the unit price of the unit itself. Okay, but that's not the total cost. The total cost is technically total cost is more indicative because it gives you the broader picture. See, what I want to know is not just the unit. I don't want to just know I don't just want to know the variable cost. I want to know the total cost. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to take the total cost and divide it by how many units. Because it's going to say, okay, how much in total is it costing me to produce one? Did it cost me that month to produce X amount? So in this case, they're doing it divided by how many units. Right, so you say your fixed divided by your unit sales. Okay, for example, equals 10 plus the amount divided by the numerator divided by the denominator equals. Now that's unit. Now, I wouldn't do it that way, but that's definitely one way to calculate it. For me, bottom line is how much total did it cost me? How much was the total cost divided by how many units did we divided by how many units did we produce? And then compare that to how much revenue did we make? Okay. So revenue, and then if you want to say per unit, we take the total revenue and divide it by. So it's the total revenue including the markup. So revenue, so production costs, which is total costs, right? Plus markup divided by how many units you sold equals the profit per unit. Now markup unit, we can see markup here is the unit cost divided by 1 minus the return on the sales because it's a percentage of the amount. So let's say the unit cost is $100 divided by 1 minus the return on the sales. Let's say that's 15%. Okay. That means the return on the sales is whatever it is. So that's $16, for example, divided by 1 minus 0.2. So 16 divided by 0.8 is 20. Okay. Now, the manufacturer would charge dealers $20 per toaster and make a profit of $4 per unit. Okay. Profit per unit is the difference between the revenue. See, I look at it more broadly, but you can look at the unit cost. So unit cost is good for calculating because it will say, okay, because how much profit are you making per unit? And then say, okay, how many units can we produce will tell us how much total profit did we make. All right, so we take the profit. Basically, what we do is we take the profit margin. We're going to multiply it by the sales. Right? And we're going to divide it by how many units. Okay, that's what it is. That's our profit per unit. Talking about markup, we have to look at the total cost. Okay, and we have to divide it by desired return on sales. That'll give you your. Actually, it's 1 minus, but yeah, give you your markup price. But the main thing is we need to understand first our unit cost. That is the total amount of cost divided by how many units. So it's the total cost. It's the cost divided by the units equals the unit cost. And divided by 1 because it's a 1. It's one of them. I'm not sure why I have 1. Oh, because it has to be a percentage on something. So it's a percentage on 100 basically. So it's 1 minus the return. So let's say it's whatever it is, 15%. 1 minus 0.15, that's 15%, is 8 so it's 0.85, or 20%, 16 minus 1 minus, 1 minus point 2 is 0.8. 16 divided by 0.8 is $20. There's other ways of calculating this too, and the other way is basically like you look at a goal. So you say, okay, because from year to year that amount could change. Okay. As in various factors. One could be the stock price, the other one could refer to so stock price could be referred to efficiency, could be referred to different things. So let's say the profit of the company. Now this is even a larger equation, but as it relates to the profit per unit, to increase the, if nothing else can be changed, to increase the profit in the company, which ultimately increases the valuation of the company, we also have to increase the profit per unit as well. Because if we're making less per unit in the same amount of sales, so it's basically there's only two real ways increasing value of the company as it relates to profit. Okay, or vice versa, depending on how you look at it. Is either we have to sell more, or each unit we have to have a larger profit per unit. It's one of the two, and ideally both. Right, we want to sell more, and we want to have a greater profit margin based upon greater efficiency, and obviously greater productions of the product. Understand that markups are necessary for a company to grow. Okay. So basically, there's no incentive really to run a business unless it's a charity or something. There's no incentive to run a business that doesn't make a profit. Now, we consider break even. Now, break even, probably should have talked about this before profit. Break even just means that you're meeting your revenues equal your expenses. Okay, that's what it is. So setting the price to break even on costs of making and marketing a product, or setting a price to make a large target return. Breaking even means no profit. No profit and no loss is break even. Otherwise known as a target return pricing. This is when the firm tries to determine the price in which it would break even or make the target return it is seeking. The reason why this matters is because the profit, you need to know that amount, and then you need to know your your profit needs to be more than your break even. Okay, that's basically what it is. So once you know the number of the break even, then you just add a percentage to the break even. So suppose your break even was 100. Okay, well I'm going to add 15, 20%, 25%, or whatever it is to the break even. Do you understand what I'm saying? And of course, also that can be this idea is a general idea. Marketing that will tell us the total cost that we can use for certain activities. Okay. So this idea can be used for different departments in different ways. Obviously for accounting first, then for marketing, and also for your manufacturing and then other related things like R&D and other things as well. So yes, so target return pricing does use a constant break-even chart, which shows us a total cost and total revenue expected on different sales volumes levels. Yeah, so it's so if you're making 0% profit, it doesn't matter what volume you have, because 0% of whatever is still zero. 0 times whatever is still 0. Extremely simple ideas, but that's what it is. Remember that your break-even volume equals the fixed cost, which means the same cost of operating the business every month, divided by the price. So let's say it costs, for example, $100,000, divided by the price. I don't know, whatever. For example, $20. In this case, the example is $300,000 divided by 20, and the variable cost, the price minus the variable cost. So that's $10. That's 300,000 divided by 20 minus 10, which is $300,000 divided by 10. That's $30,000. That's the break-even volume. That means how many you have to produce to break even. That's different. Okay, so you have break-even analysis in terms of revenue compared to expenses, and then you have break-even volume refers to how many items you have to produce to break even. So that means that you have to produce more than that amount to make a profit. Right. Okay. Now, consider something that the manufacturer should consider different prices and estimate break-even volumes, probable demand and profits for each. Okay. Now, in the table below, it shows that as price increases, the break-even volume drops, right? Because you're getting more per unit. Understand? So if you're getting more per unit, that means you don't have to produce as many units. Pretty basic, right? As the price increases, the demand for toasters also increases. Okay. Now, there is an incremental difference in between each price increase, so that also has to be calculated as well. But just as a general concept, as the price increases, decrease for demand, the demand decreases as well. Pretty basic, right? Okay. This stuff is not difficult, honestly. Now, when we look at this as a chart, if you want to look at an overall trend, we look at the x-axis, which is horizontal, and the y-axis, which is vertical. On the y-axis, you have cost in dollars in terms of thousands. That's on the y-axis. On the x-axis, you have sales in volumes and units in the volumes. Sales volume. So is sales volume compared to cost in dollars. So if you sell more and the price is the same or less, then your profit is more. Okay? Right? So remember, revenue has to do with the amount sold times the price. Revenue is not the same as profit. Profit is the difference between your revenue and your expenses, okay? That's as an accounting definition. Okay, that's what it is. Now let's go down here. A lot of this stuff basically is more finance and accounting than it is marketing, but it's something you need to take into consideration when you do certain things. Wow, okay, so that's a little small. Let's go to 125. Now, we have break-even volume. Now, remember, this refers to how many items you have to produce before you make a profit. Okay? To understand that, first you need to understand your price per unit. So for each item, how much are you charging? And then how many okay. So you need to consider first your costs. And you need to divide that by the price per unit times how many units that are sold. Okay, so when you look at those two, right, you can understand how many units you need to sell. So that it's actually going to be one. Technically, it's going to be one more. Actually, it's going to be those two plus one because it's going to be one more than. because it's at a profit. Okay, so you can see this here. Unit demand needed to break even at $14, 16, 18, 20, and 22. Unit expected unit demand at a given price. You have demand compared to, as the price gets more, the demand goes down. And you take the total revenue, right? Times 1 or times 3, whatever it is. So then we take our total costs and then we get our revenue. Okay? So we get our total revenue, demand times price equals, oh, sorry, excuse me. Let me say that again, sorry. Total cost, you take your total costs, you take your total revenue, so that's how many units. It's the price per unit, or the profit per unit, sorry, the profit per unit times how many units is your total revenue. Then you subtract your costs, whatever your costs are, meaning your fixed plus your variable. Then between the difference between the two is the profit. Could be, if it's plus, that's a profit. It's a minus, it's a loss. Okay, pretty simple, right? All right, that's the idea. There's other things too. There's more complicated things with profit, like gross profit, different things, variable profits. So between month to month, there's different ways of expressing profit. Believe it or not. So, and then total cost actually is it did a very simplified version when they said variable plus fixed. So when it comes to production, at one particular plant, you should be able to find out the fixed costs, meaning each unit cost takes a certain amount of time to produce. You can only produce so many units, and you already know how much electricity, materials, and labor, and materials you're using. Basically, your overhead is your labor plus your materials times hours times, or you could say hours per day times 7 days per week times 4 weeks a month. You can calculate this per month, per week, per day, per whatever. Day, week, or month. Okay, usually monthly. Okay, and then to figure out the revenue, we need to consider how many that we produced. Number one, so our production times our price. Okay, will give you a revenue. That's our revenue, not our profit. So revenue is objects, so it's your items produced times items sold. Then your costs are going to be the cost of production, variable and fixed. So fixed is basically your production over time. That's the same by its very definition, as in electricity costs. You know how much electricity costs. You know how much water costs. You know how much material you need for it. But let's say 1 month maybe you produce a little bit more. So if you have more costs in terms of labor, from month to month it can be a little bit less or a little bit, or the same or a little bit less. The only time, usually it's just your fixed cost, because variable is if you produce more or less in that month. Will determine the materials and the labor costs. Okay, so that's basically what it is. And it's also other things relating to also other tax things as well. There's other costs, financial costs as well, like like taxes you have to pay in addition to that. So, but those pretty much you already know you're fixed, and from month to month you have the dip. Basically, with the variable, technically the variable is only a variable if it would be the difference between the previous month and the current month. Okay, so it'd be like, okay, the difference between the previous and the variable. So So normally it's this amount, but this month it's this one. So technically, there's no such thing as fixed and variable because it's only a matter of how much did it cost, technically. But yes, there are some things. If some things were not calculated correctly, then you have that difference would be the variable compared to things that don't change is the fixed. Okay? But if you've been doing it long enough, you already know what the fixed costs are. You won't really have any variable costs unless, of course, you it costs you more. Let's say it costs you more to source the materials next month. It costs you more for, let's say, utilities, where you had more people working hour, like the labor cost was more because of, for example, let's say public policy in which that you know, let's say the minimum wage or whatever, or there was an increase in their wages. Okay? So from year to year, or for certain employees, month to month, that can change certain ones. Okay, so those parts are variable, such as overtime hours or extra costs in materials and electricity. Okay, those things also. Right? If it's extra, it would be variable. Well, very large percentage of it is fixed. Okay, just to make that clear. All right, let's move on to competition-based pricing. Now, remember that competition-based pricing is setting prices based upon competitor strategies, prices, costs, and market offerings. So basically, the first thing is you need to know what the competition is charging. So to be competitive, you have to have a price that's close to their price. If it's the same offering, meaning when they say offering, they're referring to the product or service in terms of its benefits and features. So for the benefits and features, what is the cost? And then so you have that your competitors. That's one. So you can compare direct by direct or side by side comparison with each one of your competitors. And then there's another way of looking at it, which is the average, the market average. So what you do is you take all of everybody in the market, including your company, add all that up and divide it by how many companies. That's the average. Okay, so you look at the market average. You can say, is mine more than the market average or less than the market average? Okay, so that will give you a better, like macro, holistic view of it. Because some of your competitors may charge more than you, or some may charge less. Now, where it matters is the price compared to the benefits and features. That's the important thing to remember. So yes, we need to consider the prices. We need to consider the costs. If your competition can do it for cheaper, maybe you need to implement the same strategy in terms of cost. If your competition can offer more in terms of benefits, maybe you need to do the same. Okay, those types of things. Right now, that's pretty straightforward. The idea, the idea to increase your profit is to reduce your cost. Okay? You can reduce the cost of the overall process, whether it's to make a product or service, and your profits will be cheaper. So for production, the profit is calculated per unit. If it's service, it's per customer per unit at a time. Okay, so because that's my line of my field. So for example, each customer per hour, so you have it's based upon a time, not a unit. So for example, private lessons is this rate per hour. See, it's calculated per hour because let's say it's an hour and a half, it's that rate plus one half. Or if it's 2 hours, it's that rate times two. So you need to start with the rate first. So it's the profit would be basically your overhead. So again, it's revenue minus expenses, and it's calculated not per unit, but it's calculated per hour. Okay, and how many per hour per student? Okay, so that's private. So there's basically two ways of looking at it. Private student, okay, uh, right? Private student has a greater profit margin, but it has less revenue. So that's the bottom line technically for business is revenue. Because if you can keep your expenses on, you can say the cost is almost the same, right? But then but then you have to consider how much time you have in terms of the opportunity costs. So actually having more people in the same hour, taking lessons or paying for a service will mean that the total amount collected is more. Therefore, that makes the revenue more. So when you have more people, and assuming you're not charging the same amount for group pricing as you do individual pricing, right? Which is a fair assumption, a fair presupposition, is that basically the price per student is cheaper. So, for example, instead of 200 an hour, for example, you're charging 150 an hour. But instead of having one student at 200, you're having two students at 150. The total is 300. So which one do you make more with? A group of students because you're making 300 instead of 200. Okay, that's the idea. And it's the same unit of time. So it just means that you're making more. Sorry, you're making technically. Excuse me. The price per student is less. So, but the total profit per student is more. Total profit. Uh, so yeah, the profit per student is less because you're charging less, but the total amount of profit made for that session is more. You see what I'm saying? That's what it is. Services, you look in terms of time. Production, you look in terms of units. That's what it is. Because it depends on your pricing structure. How do you do your pricing? Similar to what they were talking about before. Now, with that in mind, just as a reminder, you want to remember that competition-based pricing involves setting prices based on competitors' strategies, costs, prices, and market offerings. Now, consumer will base their judgments of a product's value on the prices that competitors charge for similar products. This is why you market group pricing differently than you market private lesson one-on-one differently than a one-to-many group differently. Just like if you went to school and there was only, let's say, a couple of people in the class, let's say one person in the class, that would be wonderful, right? But then if you have, like, for example, 30, 40, 50 in the class, quite different, right? Same idea. One is private and one is group. See that? Now, in assessing competitors' pricing strategies, companies should answer several questions. First, how does the company's market offerings compare with the company competitors' offerings in terms of customer value? Which one is more valuable? Is it more valuable to have more time per student, one on one, if you're the student? I'm just using this student as an example. Or is it better to learn as a group because it's cheaper? So price also can influence the value of a product. So you think it's more valuable to learn as a group and pay less? That's another perception. It depends on how you look at it. Okay? Obviously, a customer won't pay the same price uh, when they're in a group as if they were one on one. If consumers perceive less value relative to the competing products, the company must either if they must charge a lower price or change customer perceptions to justify the higher price. So why are you charging a higher price? You have to ask yourself why. You have a good reason, or is it just because you're greedy? You just want more. Well, wanting more doesn't add value to the customer. Next, we want to consider how strong are current competitors. What are their current pricing strategies? Okay, just like this. I'm going to relate it to an industry that I know well. Okay, technically it's a different niche, but people have choices between niches. Okay, just like this, private tutoring in a school. People can choose which one do they think is better. Well, it could be better in terms of interaction with the students, could be better in terms of reputation, or it could be better in terms of relating to prestige. Or on the other hand, you could perceive it as, well, private tutor has more flexible pricing, private tutor has better availability, private tutor has cheaper prices. That's what I'm saying. So the main two things is flexibility and pricing. Okay, two things, right? So when you compare the two, you can see pluses and minuses, both strengths and weaknesses on both ends. The school has greater economies of scale. Right? That's a strength. Private tutor doesn't. Okay? They have more facilities. Private tutor doesn't. Okay, that's strengths and weaknesses. Okay, but the strength of the private tutor, he has more flexible scheduling, possibly, and more flexible geographic location where he can do it. With the school, they usually don't send us. There are some specialty. It costs more because you got to consider the transportation time. Okay, just like this. If you have a teacher, they're not very flexible about where they do the lesson. It's at the school. Now, some of them will have a different program where they can say, okay, we're offering another value-added service where we'll go to your home or your office or wherever you like for an addition for a higher price. Why? They got to consider the cost of going there, technically round trip, but going there, right? You have to consider the expense of going there plus the time of going there. See what I'm saying? So, one of the industry terms that I was aware of when I was doing it was called a travel. It's called a travel fee. That's basically the cost of the transportation plus the time, which is the percentage of time, or the total, or you could say the total time traveling to go there compared to 1 hour. Okay? So let's say you're 1 hour, let's say, because you're using their time to go there. Okay? So instead of going to a person's office, you want them to go to that place. Well, if they have to travel over X amount of minutes of time, right, it's going to be significant. If it's like 5 minutes or something, whatever, it's not. So it is a matter of what the person providing the service considers significant. But yes, it's the cost of the transportation plus the time you would take to go there compared to the rate per hour. So if the rate per hour is, for example, 200, and it takes like an hour to go there, or even let's say a half an hour, that's 100. That's 200 divided by half. That's 5.5 or one half. That's 100 plus the cost of going there. Let's say the going there is $10, for example. That's now 100 plus 10. It's 110. Or they could just have a flat amount. Just like profit, you can consider as a percentage or you can consider as a flat amount. There's two ways of looking at them. So with the private tutor, it's already understood that they already have that feature. Uh, but with the school, it's going to cost significantly more because they don't have the teacher in. Well, they don't have the teacher in the school to do other things. Plus, plus any other management considerations. So there's lots of things to consider. So from the school, you have that as a weakness. It's more complicated and its cost. It's may not be available. Plus, it's costlier to have someone go to your office, home, cafe, or wherever of choosing. Okay. Versus private tutor has the advantage, or in this case, strength that is something almost standard with the service. Okay. So that is a big convenience. Availability a lot of times with tutors is also their availability oftentimes is 7 days a week. Schools it's usually only 5 to 6 days a week, depending on the area that it's in, the geographical region in terms of the area, like the country. So, for example, in some countries the schools open 7 days a week, and sometimes it's only open 5 or 6, not including holidays and stuff like that. So you may have less flexibility, you may have less time that's available. So depends on what they value, depends on their needs. So you can compare the two strengths and weaknesses, and the customer's going to weigh it according to what they need and what they think is a fair price or and what matches their needs best according to the situation. All right. Now, so yeah, they're basically. So if we do that comparison, we gather all that information, we do a side-by-side comparison, we say, okay, private tutor can do this, company cannot. Okay, private tutor, okay, private tutor is more flexible, okay, check. And private tutor a little bit cheaper, check. Private tutor more flexible, check. Private tutor more available, check. Okay, private tutor. Or let's say prestige. I want prestige, check. I want to be able to brag about the price, check. It depends on how you look at it. And then in terms, so that's from an external point of view. Internal, that's from the customer's point of view. External. Internal is yours compared to your competitor's point of view. From there, what first thing you want to look at is pricing. How much does it cost per hour or per however you charge? Okay. Second of all, availability. Third of all, flexibility in format in terms of how you do lessons. Okay, those three things. You want to compare those three things because you know that's what customers want, and you know that's the things that they're doing, so you compare the two. Understand? Of course, pricing would be the first thing to consider. Benefits and features can be subdivided into a couple things like I just showed you. Now, that's basically what it is. Um, you know, it's just like if you buy something online versus if you buy in person. There's different strengths, there's different pluses and minuses, and strengths and weaknesses. So, plus could be cheaper, faster, more convenient. Minus could be you're not able to try on the clothes. You can see what it looks like, but you can't try it on. Could be it takes longer to get it. Right? That's the minus for online. The plus for online is more convenient and possibly cheaper. Okay? That's what it is. And less time required to make a purchasing decision. Because you don't have to go anywhere, you just go to the website. Okay? So it depends on what's more valuable for you. That's a value judgment that the customer will have to make. And a lot of businesses they have both options, which is pretty much ideal. And the way it's set up with that is you have basically you have a website feature where people can see things online on a website, and then they also have a feature where they can call the company or whoever's doing the service or making the product and ask questions about it. Okay, so there's two different ways. Let's switch gears to other things such as internal and external considerations affecting price decisions. Now, this is going to be specifically related to price. Now, beyond customer value proposition, cost, and competitor strategies, a company must consider several additional internal and external factors. For internal factors are which affecting pricing inside the company's overall marketing strategy. Remember, we always need to relate it back to marketing. We're talking about marketing. We're not talking about business strategic business management or business strategy. Blah, blah. Overall marketing strategy, objectives, marketing mix, as well as other organizational considerations. Now, marketing does overlap with business strategic business management and other things as well. But for purposes of this book, we want to make sure we use it in the context of marketing. External factors include the nature of the market, and demand, and other environmental factors. Now, let me ask you a question, just to test your understanding. Suppose you were in a market before that had high demand for your service. And now, because of public policy, the demand for your service is much less because um, people are not buying it, and because the facilities that are required for providing the service is no longer available. What do you think is going to happen? Well, those are external factors. That's the nature of the market. Number one is you will have the availability in terms of sourcing a place. Number two, the overall demand that will, because there's no availability for the service, that will eventually make the demand lower as well. And once demand becomes lower, the price becomes lower. See how that works? Now, I'm not saying that the demand will be zero, but the demand will be less. And even though your value of the service is very high, because the demand for the service itself is lower, means the price has to be lower too. Okay? Now that's where the environment or the external factors can affect pricing. That's the nature of the market. Nature of the market can be affected by public policy, and also can be affected by the public perception of the product or service that you're offering. Now, when we consider the overall marketing strategy, objectives, and mix, we need to consider the following. First of all, price is only one element of the company's broader marketing strategy. Thus, before setting price, the company must decide on an overall marketing strategy for the product or service. If the company has selected the target market and positioning carefully, then its marketing and mix strategy, including price, will be fairly straightforward. Why? Because you know what your pricing is and you know what your value is. Now, here's the thing. You have the price of something that determines the value, and you also have the features and benefits that increase the value. For example, using the education analogy, private education analogy. Suppose you have an option of learning a language from a native speaker and a non-native speaker. Which one would you prefer? Okay, suppose it was pretty close in price. Let's say it's within 10%. Okay, so instead of 200, it's like 190. Sorry, it's 180. Okay. If the price is pretty close in terms of how people view it, and but the difference is the quality, meaning like a native speaker versus a non-native speaker, that is the benefits will be quite different. Okay, so because the benefits are different as it's perceived by the customer, the price also has to be different. Okay, so first is the price, but compared to the benefits, as we've talked about before. And the benefits can be subdivided, can be defined by how it's sourced. Okay? So in terms of a service, is it sourced from with the most expertise or less expertise? It's a big difference, right? Just like if let's say you're learning how to play, let's say you want to learn how to play golf or chess or bowling or something like that, right? If you're learning from a pro who's good at explaining how to play the game, right? Versus you're just learning for somebody who's played the game, there's a big difference in the benefits. Okay? Not so much the features, but the benefits. That's the idea. In terms of products, we're talking about branding. Okay? If you have a well-established name in terms of a service, that's also the difference in perceived value is also in the branding as well. For example, when Honda developed its Acura brand to compete with European luxury performance cars in the higher income segment, remember this is higher benefit, higher price. So remember, it's higher income segment. That's higher price market. This required charging high price, right? Because it costs more to make the item. So your break even price is going to be more. Thus, because your break even price is more, what you have to charge for markup has to be your markup is going to be the total price is going to be more because your break even price is more. Translation, it costs more to produce the product. So in contrast, when introduced the Honda Fit model billed as a print size fuel miser with a feisty giddy up, unquote. This positioning required charging a low price. Okay. Thus, pricing strategy is largely determined by decisions on the marketing positioning. So how are you positioned? Are you positioned as something that's high end or low end? These basically are going to be different niches in a segment. For example, if I say cars, excuse me, that's going to be a different segment because if we're talking about SUV, let's say SUV, truck, whatever, blah, blah, those are different segments. Within all the SUVs, you have different prices, and that depends on the quality of the car. Is it luxury car or is it regular car? Okay, different niche within the same segment. Pricing may play an important role in helping to accomplish company objectives at many levels. A firm may set price to attract new customers or profitability to retain existing ones. It can set prices low to prevent competition from entering the market, or set prices at competitors' levels to stabilize the market. So those are two different strategies. One way to get market share is to undercut what's called undercutting your competition, which means making your price less than your competition. If that is a good strategy, if you can make it work profit wise, meaning if it's cheaper for you, if it's cheaper than your competition at whatever rate it is in the difference. For example, suppose that the school charges $300 an hour and you charge $200 an hour, right? If you could make it at least 100 an hour or less, or sorry, 100 an hour or more less than your competition, that means you can undercut. It means you can undercut the competition in a way that will be profitable for you. If it's costing this, obviously, if it's costing you the same amount of money, then of course you can't operate whatever you're doing. Then you're gonna have to. Then undercutting pretty much. That's how you make the profit. So it depends. Again, it depends on what they value more. But if you can do it for cheaper, then you can undercut your competition. That's basically what it is. If you can keep a price stable over a period of time, you can also maintain market share and loyalty of customers as well. Price is only one of the marketing mixed tools that a company can achieve for marketing objectives. Price decisions must be coordinated with the product design, distribution, and promotion. Let's look at those three. How is the product or service designed? What's the format? That's the product design. In terms of distribution, how can you get the product or service out to different customers? That's logistical. That's on the logistical end. Can you do it for cheaper, or what can you offer? Third thing is promotion. Can you offer a cheaper price for a certain period of time? Or for enough period of time to get customers in, and then have the chance to give them a deal where X period of time is cheaper. That's your promotion. Decisions to form a consistent and effective integrated market. This is for decisions to form a consistent tongue twister today, consistent and effective integrated marketing program. Decisions made for other marketing mix variables may affect pricing decisions. For example, decision to position the market on a high performance quality will mean that the seller must charge a higher price to cover higher costs. Yeah, so it depends on the venue. If it's a service, it will depend on the venue. If it's a product, it will depend on the production costs. So if you can, the idea will all depend on how much you can do it. What does it cost to produce the product or service? Okay, are there cheaper ways, or is it more expensive? And what niche are you serving? If you have a niche where they want more for it, then it's going to cost you more. But at the same time, you have to charge more because it's going to cost you more. Okay? And also with the venue, for example, if they're paying more, you need to provide something that is commensurate in value with it as well. So it goes both ways. Companies often position their products on price and then tailor other marketing decisions and prices that they want to change. So this can change depending on the market conditions. Now, for the purpose of definition, target costing is pricing that starts with an ideal selling price, when the target costs that will ensure that the price is met. Obviously, your pricing has to be at least as much or more than the cost to you to provide the product or service. That's target costing. Okay. So that's something you got to figure out what your target costing is. Okay, so you want to figure out what's the ideal price, and then after the cost, you want to see that the price is meeting or exceeding the cost. Now, other companies de-emphasize price and use other marketing mix tools to create non-price positions. This is something different. Now, often the best strategy is not to charge the lowest price, but charge rather differentiate the marketing offer to make it with a higher price. For example, Bang & Olufsen B&O, known for its cost-cutting consumer electronics, builds more value into its products and charges sky-high prices. A B&O 50-inch BEO Vision 4 HD TV costs you $7,500. This is as of 2012, so it's probably much cheaper now. A 65-inch model runs $13,500, and a 103-inch model goes for $93,050. A complete B&O entertainment system. Well, you don't really want to know the price, but the target customers recognize P&O's very high quality and willing to pay more to get it. It's kind of like Bose. Bang & Olufsen, that's one. That's kind of like the European version. I think Bose is basically the American version. Now, for some people, that matters, having that high price, that high quality TV. For other people, it doesn't matter. And the way to know that is based upon their needs. Okay? Are they using this for commercial purposes, or are they using this for personal purposes? And I'll show you what they value and what they don't value in the context. Now, some marketers even position their products on high prices, featuring high prices as part of the product award. Right? Just like this. You buy an expensive bike or you buy a cheap bike. Well, there's a certain prestige to buying an expensive bike because that bike was expensive, implying that that bike had higher value because it was expensive. For example, Grand Marnier offers a $225 bottle of Curve Descent Sequentinaire that marked the tagline, hard to find, impossible to pronounce. Yeah, so hard to find. See, that's the quantity. Okay. Prestige has to do with the name, the branding. And Titus Vehicles, a premium bicycle manufacturer, features its high prices as advertising. Why? Because some people buy it based upon the prestige of the price. Thus, marketers must consider the total marketing strategy and mix when setting prices. But again, even when featuring price, marketers need to remember that customers rarely buy on price alone. That's true. Instead, they seek products and give them the best value in terms of benefits received, the prices paid. Notice how they didn't say features, they said benefits. Meaning, from the customer's point of view, what do they get? What's the benefit that they get from the product or service that you're providing for them? Okay, keep that in mind. You can see here a picture of this lady. That this bike is $7,750. Well, it's probably made of like the most expensive um, materials, and it probably has prestige. So not only are they just selling, it's not just that they're selling a bicycle, but they're selling prestige. You understand? That's what it is. Okay? And also, it could be selling the experience also. So for rich people, they sell the experience of buying it, and they sell the experience of the support, and also what they perceive would be their experience after they buy it in terms of using it. Okay? Now let's talk about organizational considerations. Management must decide who within organizations should set prices. Companies handle pricing in a variety of ways. In small companies, prices are often set up by management rather than marketing or sales departments. In large companies, pricing is typically handled by divisional or product line managers. In industrial markets, salespeople may be allowed to negotiate with customers within certain price ranges. Even so, top management sets the pricing objectives and policies, and it often approves the prices proposed by lower management or salespeople. And industries which pricing is a key factor, airline, aerospace, steel, railroads, oil companies, etc. Companies often have pricing departments to set the best prices for or help others instead. So if you have marketing data, it could be an external company who gets this marketing data and buy that so they'll know how to price things. These departments report back to the marketing department or top management. Others who have an influence on pricing, including sales managers, product managers, finance managers, and accountants, also are influential in that pricing decision. Now, in terms of marketing demand, this is another thing to consider, major consideration. Okay, now, as noted earlier, good pricing starts with the understanding of how customers' perceptions of value affect the prices they're willing to pay. Both consumer and industrial buyers balance the price of product or service against the benefits of owning it. Thus, before setting prices, the marketer must understand the relationship between price and demand for the company's products. Let me say that one more time. Before setting prices, so before you make a price for something, you need to understand that the marketer must understand the relationship between price and demand for the company's product. This means you have to understand trends and you need marketing data. You gotta look at the overall trend of what's happening in the market. Is it up or is it down? Is demand increasing, decreasing, or staying the same? Okay. So that's called the price-demand relationship. How it varies depending on the different types of markets. For example, let me give you an example. Private English tutoring. You think that's going to be popular in a country where that's their first language? No. What if you go to Asia where their first language isn't English, but they need that they want that as part of their education and being able to get into university, a Western university? You think there'll be a demand? Of course, it's going to be huge demand. What about kids who want to get higher grades? Okay, another thing. Education consulting. Okay, so it depends on where you are. A lot of times the influences the demand for things. Okay. So basically, it's like this. It's just like in microeconomics where they say it's called there's something called price and demand elasticity. So basically, it means that if you the less of something you have, the more that you want it. The more that you use it can either increase or decrease demand depending on if the demand has already been filled. Okay? And depending on the demand, if the demand is increasing, the price is increasing. If the demand is decreasing, the price is decreasing. Why? Because they've already fulfilled the saturation point, which is the midpoint between excess and having enough. So in the beginning, where you don't have enough, the demand will increase and the price will increase. There's an intersection point between saturation and excess. Okay? The other end of the demand curve and the other end of the supply curve. Okay? So there's two curves when you consider that on the economic standpoint, which relates to markets. Now, when you also for pricing in different types of markets, it will depend. So if there's less demand in the market, okay, price has to be less. But it depends. If it's a specialized service that has great value in the minds of the consumer, so generally the way it works is the more specialized the service is, the more it's going to cost. The less availability of something in a country that at least has some demand, the more the cost. So let me give you the explanation that also in addition to what I'm saying, I'll give you what the book is also explaining. So this is pricing in different types of markets. The seller's pricing freedom varies with different types of markets. Economists recognize four types of markets, each presenting a different pricing challenge. Under pure competition, the market consists of many buyers and sellers trading in a uniform commodity, which means something of value, such as wheat, copper, financial securities. Okay? And so, no single buyer or seller has much effect on the going market price. Why? Because there's no change in the market. So if the demand or supply has not changed, then the seller does not have an effect on the market price. Do you understand? In a purely competitive market, marketing and research. So that's marketing and research, product development, pricing, advertising, and sales promotion play little or no role. Why? Because their input's not going to, if you can't influence the market, then having more information about it's not going to influence it. Thus, sellers in these markets do not spend much time on marketing strategy. Now, you have the opposite. Okay? Under monopolistic competition, which means there's only one company that does it, it's called a monopoly, or a monopolistic competition. The market consists of many buyers and sellers who trade over a range of policies rather than a single price. A range of prices occurs because sellers can differentiate their prices to buyers. Sellers try to develop differentiated offers to different customer segments, and in addition, price freely uses branding, advertising, personal selling, and selling to offer to set their offers apart. For example, Toyota sets its Prius brand apart from strong branding and advertising, reducing the impact of price. It advertises the third generation of Prius takes you from 0 to 60 and 70% fewer emissions. Because there are many competitors in such markets, each firm is less affected by competitors' pricing strategies than oligopolistic markets. Under oligopolistic competition, the market consists of few sellers who are highly sensitive to each other's pricing and marketing strategies. Because there are few sellers, each seller is alert and responsive to competitors' pricing strategies and moves. In a pure monopoly, the market consists of only one seller. That's what I was referring to, monopoly. Not quite the same thing as what they were saying. So if it's a pure monopoly, then the market consists of only one seller. The one seller may be a government monopoly, such as the U.S. Postal Service, a private regulated monopoly, or so you have private, public, and under publics you have governmental and non-governmental, and for private you have whatever is in the market itself. Now, a private regulated monopoly, such as a power company, or a private non-regulated monopoly, such as DuPont, which introduced nylon. Pricing is handled differently in each case. Well, let's think about that for a second, why that would be. Well, if you have less options for pricing, what price do you think you're going to pay? More or less? More. Because there's less options for what you can pay. Therefore, you have to pay the price of whatever it is. If there's more competition, that means there's more choices for pricing. Therefore, the potential for a lower price is higher. Potential, I said. Now, let's talk about the price to demand relationship. I was kind of talking about this before as it relates to microeconomics and how microeconomics relates to marketing and business. Now, each price of the company might change. Uh, each price the company might charge will lead to a different type of demand. So obviously, the higher the price, the less demand, because that means less people can afford it. The relationship between price charge and resulting demand is shown in the demand curve. The demand curve, just as a matter of definition, is a curve that shows the number of units of the market will buy at a given time period at a different prices that might be charged. So, so if I were to explain this quite basically, we're basically saying the more that you charge, there's less people who are able to pay, willing or able, especially able to pay the price. So because of disposable income and demographical differences. For example, how many people can buy a Ferrari? How many people can buy a Lamborghini? Can the average person buy a Ferrari or Lamborghini? No, difference. But if I ask you, let's say you buy a really cheap car, let's say $5,000 car, $10,000 car, right? How many people can buy that car? A lot. Almost everybody, right? Who has money, right? Almost everybody. So you see, those are on two extremes. One is very limited, and one is very distributed. Meaning there's lots of people that can buy it cheap, and very little can buy expensive. the demand curve shows the number of units the market will buy in any given amount of time period at different prices that might be charged. In the normal case, demand and price are inversely related, right? It's not inversely related, means they go in opposite trends. Okay, so the higher the price, the lower the number. Okay? So as price goes up, price is Y, demand is X. So as the price goes up, right? Sorry, technically, it's once the price goes past the saturation, the demand goes down. So demand on X will go up just as the price will go down, just like that. In the beginning, if it hasn't reached either the market average or the market saturation point, basically it will just the demand for it will just go up. In the normal case, demand and price are inversely related, as I mentioned. That is, the higher the price, the lower the demand, as I just mentioned. Thus, the company would sell less if it raised the price from P1 to P2. That means price 1 to price 2. And short consumers with limited budgets probably will buy less of something if its price is too high. And that's definitely true. Definitely true. And the way to know that for sure is ask yourself, if you are going to buy something, right, and you had the same amount of money each time you bought, right? Right? And let's say that the item you want to buy, let's say you need the same amount of quantity of the item each time. Let's say the price was more. Well, would you buy more? I mean, what would happen? Well, you would be able to buy less and less of it because it costs more, right? Pretty basic, right? Understanding a brand's price demand curve is crucial to good pricing decisions. Why? Because what we want to do is we want to say, okay, for this pricing, how many people can we get for customers? And for this price, how many can we get for customers? And that's what it is. So, based upon the percentage of people will tell us who are the types of people who can buy it, then we can tailor our marketing messages to those types of people. Because in the end, what we're trying to find out is what are the types of people who are going to buy it. Okay? Right. Now, most companies try to measure the demand curves for estimating demand at different prices. The types of marketing makes a difference. Okay, so that's the idea. In Monopoly, the demand curve shows a total market demand resulting from different prices. If the company faces competition in demand, a different price will depend on the competitor's price to stay constant at or change at the company's new prices. Let's talk about price elasticity and demand, is what I was talking about earlier. Consider the two demand curves in the figure 10.6, which is below on the next page. Price increase from P1 to P2 leads to a relatively small drop in demand from quantity 1 to quantity 2. Remember, it's price compared to demand to quantity. So price 1 compared to Q1 and price 2 compared to Q2. Now, if demand hardly changes with a small change in price, we say the price is inelastic. Okay? Small change in price. Okay? It's inelastic. Why? Because it doesn't change much. If you think of an elastic, what does it do? It bends and it can stretch out farther, right? Small change in price means demand is inelastic. It doesn't change much. If demand changes greatly, then we say demand is elastic. Price elasticity is demand given by the following formula. So we consider the following formula. Price elasticity of demand, meaning the ability to move in demand, equals the change in quantity of demanded. So between the first one, between each tier period of time, let's say let's say month one, month two, month three, whatever, divided by the change in the price. So let's say the demanded, let's say, is 10% less. Well, that means that the change in price has to be 10% less. You understand what I'm saying? So this is commensurate with whatever it is. So, in fact, I'd even see that they said 10%. I'm just thinking 10% is an easy number. Suppose demand falls by 10% when the seller raises its price by 2%. Price elasticity demand is therefore divided by 5. Okay, so there's 10% less demand, but it increased by 2%. Price elasticity is out there for 5, right? Because the difference is 5. The minus sign confirms the inverse relationship between price and demand, means the opposite relationship. So inverse is when you flip it over and make it opposite. For example, the inverse of 2 to 1 is 1 to 2. What you do is you take the bottom one that you're dividing by, and then you flip it over and make it the numerator, the one on the top. Do you understand? So basically, you make it opposite to what it is now. That will indicate an elasticity. Okay? Now, what determines the price elasticity is demand. Well, the buyers are less price sensitive when they produce when they prove. Sorry, buyers are less sensitive when the product they are buying. Sorry, the product they are buying is unique or when it's high in quality, prestige, or exclusiveness, or substitute products are hard to find, in which case they cannot easily compare the quality of substitutes. Okay? So you have two things: either it's hard to find, or it's high quality. So high quality is one, hard to find is the second one, or hard to find a substitute. That's the third one. When you don't have a substitute, you're monopolistic. Okay, it means only you can do that. That means when there's very few choices, that means the price elasticity is you have a high price elasticity because it means the price can change to be higher. Okay? The total expenditure for a product is low relative to the income or when the cost is shared by another party. Okay? If demand is elastic rather than inelastic, sellers will consider lowering their prices. Why? Because there's going to be less demand for it. Therefore, to get demand, they have to lower their price. So less demand. So if you want to say it simply, when you have less demand, you have to have less price. When you have more demand, you have more price. See how that's easy? Now, a lower price will produce more total revenue. Practice makes sense as long as the extra costs of producing and selling do not exceed the extra revenue. Right? So it's just like that analogy they talked about when they said when you produce more, you produce more profit. Why? Because you're more efficient. Well, from an economic standpoint, um, when you have a price that doesn't change, as in your demand doesn't change, well then your price has to be lowered because there's less demand for the product or service. You understand? At the same time, most firms would avoid pricing that turns their products into commodities. Okay. The idea is the reason why you want to turn it into a commodity is because it wants to be an ongoing thing. That's the difference between a one-time sale and an ongoing sales. Like, for example, one-time purchase and a subscription service. The money is in the subscription service because you have repeat business, okay, or ongoing demand. Whether it's artificial or real, it's still an ongoing demand. In recent years, forces such as dips in the economy, deregulation, and instant price comparisons afforded by the internet and other technologies have increased consumer price sensitivity, turning products ranging from telephones and computers to new automobiles into commodities. In the consumer's eyes, means that these are things of value. So when you turn something into something of value, it often becomes a one-time purchases. When something's a one-time purchase, that means that the price uh, the price declines because the demand declines. Marketers need to work harder than ever to differentiate their offerings when a dozen competitors are selling virtually the same product at a comparable lower price. More than ever, companies need to understand the price sensitivity of their customers. Means how much how high of a price will the customer uh, pay and will tolerate. Well, meaning how much of price increases will they tolerate. Trade-offs people are willing to make between price and product characteristics. So like this, there's two ways of looking at it. One is, well, I'll make the price cheaper, but I give you less for it. Or I'll make the price more, but I'll give you more for it. Those are the trade-offs. You pay more, but you get more. The other trade-off is you pay less, but then you give up features. What trade-offs do you want to make? Let's talk about the economy. Economic conditions have a strong impact on the firm's pricing strategies. Economic facts such as a boom or a recession, inflation, and interest rates affect pricing decisions because they affect consumer spending, perception of the product's price and value, and the company's cost of producing and selling the product. Okay, so if you have a bad economy, you have less people buying. Less people buying the same price or higher. You have a good economy to do the opposite. There's more demand for things that are same or higher. So conversely, if you're in a bad economy, you have to sell only those which are the same price or less. And I mean that's how the economy, which basically just refers to the overall willingness and spending power of consumers. Okay, so one obvious the most obvious response to new economic realities is to cut prices and offer deep discounts. And thousands of companies have done just that, lowering prices to make products more affordable and help our spur short-term sales. Keyword is short-term. You got to consider how that affects the perceived value of the brand. However, such price cuts have undesirable long-term consequences. Lower prices may mean lower margins, which is assuming that it's just costing you the same amount as lower margins. So as we talked about there. Okay. Second of all, deep discounts may cheapen a brand in consumers' eyes. I can tell you that even when I can tell you the way people perceive things is that even without even seeing the features and the benefits, if they see that one thing costs more, they'll automatically get an idea that that must be more valuable because after all, it costs more. Before they saw the, the features and benefits, that's what they're already thinking. And once a company cuts prices, it's difficult to raise them again when the economy recovers. If for no other reason, if you think of it from their point of view, why do I want to pay more if I don't have to? And I've experienced this before. A long time ago, when it first entered the tutoring market, right, tutoring business in general, the industry, I set a price at X amount of dollars per hour. And then the student says, "How come it's X amount of dollars?" I said, "Well, that way everybody can afford it, especially because my customers are students." "Oh, I thought it's really cheap, so I was wondering why." I told them, I said, "That's fine. You can pay me more. You can pay me double if you want." "Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. I'll pay cheaper for it." See, if they once you convey the fact that you could charge them more, which means you have confidence in your brand and your product or service, right? You've also at the same time conveyed the message that your product is worth more, but you're just charging less, so because that way everybody will be able to afford it. See, that's a different message than, well, that's just I'm just trying to make it cheap. That's a different marketing message than saying, well, I'm doing it so everybody can afford it, not because I want it to be, not because it's cheap, but because I want everybody to be able to afford it and have the same quality. You see, that's the message they're getting. But once you've told them, see, in the beginning they'll think it's cheaper quality, but then once you tell them that they're willing to increase the price, that means that implies in their mind that it's actually higher quality, but you're just charging cheaper for it. Okay? So that's what it is. Now, what I've found is that if the more professional a service is, and the more specialized a service is, the more you need to charge to get people to be convinced. Because there are people who can definitely afford more. Because the people I deal with, these are higher earners, and a lot of them are rich or very high earners. Okay, price is not the issue; it's what they're going to get for the price, which is what most people are thinking anyway. See what I'm saying? Now, rather than cutting prices, many companies are instead shifting their marketing focus to focus on more affordable items in the product mixes. So, product mixes means you have different products that you can offer, otherwise known as a product line. You have one line of products that's like everything is this price, another line is everything is this price, kind of like that. You have the more expensive one, that's one line, product line, and the other one is the cheaper one, that's another product line. Okay, product or service line. Otherwise known, they call it line, but referring to a product line as kind of a generic term referring to products or services. Sometimes they put it in slogans such as more savings, more doing. All right. So Home Depot said the more savings, the more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. That's basically you're getting a savings on it means you're getting it for cheaper than before, or cheaper than somebody else. So that already implies a price value. You understand? Okay. Also, even in tough economic times, consumers do not buy based upon prices alone. They balance the price they pay against the value of what they receive. It's just like gasoline, right? There's different grades of gasoline that have different prices. Well, why is there different prices? Why are people willing to pay that different prices? Because there's different qualities. It's a very good reason for having a higher price, right? Different features and different benefits. Why? Because higher quality. Now, let's look at external factors. Beyond the market and the economy, the company must consider several other factors in its external environment when setting prices. It must know the impact of its prices will have on the parties of its environment. How will resellers react to various prices? Okay. Will they stop buying or they will continue to buy? Okay. That's an important thing to consider. Right? If you're a wholesaler and you're selling to a retailer, but you're increasing your price, will they still buy the same quantity? Or will they buy less of a quantity? Usually they won't buy more of a quantity unless they need more quantity. The company should set a price that gives resellers a fair profit, encourage their support, and help them uh, sell the product effectively. Okay? Government is another important external influence on pricing decisions. Finally, social. So some because some industries, or otherwise known as some markets, the term industry and market is interchangeably used because technically a market is industry and industry is a market. So in some industries, it's regulated. The price is regulated by the government. Okay, so that's definitely inelastic. And then we also have social concerns. Okay, that's the other thing. In setting prices, companies' short-term sales, market share, and profit goals may be tempered by better social considerations. Okay? When they refer to social considerations, it's basically the perception and the attitude of the consumers in the market. For example, if you increase the prices of things too much, people are unhappy, they think it's unfair, unethical, whatever. That's social things. Or if you increase it just for a short period of time, they'll think that's an okay thing to do in the culture. So, as far as social considerations are concerned, it relates to the culture of the society that you're in and how they respond to price changes. Okay? And as I said, that will be discussed in chapter 11. Now, we have a case example from Whole Foods Market. This is a high-end grocery store. What they do during a troubled economy, okay, they have different tactics. They have different marketing tactics. One is, like, for example, a membership where you'll gain points and you'll be able to gain, uh, or discounts based upon points. Other loyalty programs as well. Many companies do that. Okay. Another thing is giving them extra service for the price that they pay. Okay. And basically, the way you do it is something called through value added services. Basically, a service added to a product to make them want to keep paying the price that they're paying. A lot of times, what they do is you have these membership programs where they can buy a certain amount and then they can build up points and they can get free stuff or discounted things. So that's your membership or loyalty programs. All right, so that will end that for this lesson. I'll have chapter 11 next Tuesday. Now, let's talk about the objectives that I want to check with you to make sure that you've understood for the lesson. Number one is we want to be able to answer the question, what is a price? We want to be able to discuss the importance of pricing in today's fast-changing environment. When they refer to fast-changing environment, referring to things changing in the marketplace where you're buying and selling. Number two, we want to be able to identify three major pricing strategies and discuss the importance of understanding customer value perceptions, company costs, and competitor strategies when setting prices. This has to do with the pricing strategy. Okay? Objective number three, we want to be able to identify and define the other internal and external factors affecting the firm's decisions. Remember, this has to do with um, government and non-governmental influences. Okay? Right. Meaning government and social, societal influences. So those are the three objectives we need to know for that chapter. And one more thing that we need to check to make sure we know and understand is the key terms. For objective 1, it's price. For objective 2, customer value based pricing, good value pricing, value added pricing. For objective 2. For objective 3, we have much more vocabulary. Cost based pricing, fixed costs, such as meaning overhead, variable costs, total costs, experience curve, otherwise known as the learning curve, cost plus pricing, which is the markup pricing, break even pricing, which is target return pricing. And we have competition based pricing, target costing, demand curve, and pricing elasticity. And if you want to know more about this price elasticity concept, I recommend you take up a course in microeconomics. If I have enough people saying they're interested in that, I will provide that, and so we can talk about the supply and demand curves and price and demand elasticities. I don't want to go into great depth on that, especially because this needs to be related back to marketing and not economics. If I do have enough people who want to learn microeconomics, I'll be happy to do just like this, one chapter at a time, one lesson at a time, and explain how this works in greater detail. Okay? So that will end it for me. I'd like to thank you for watching the video as a kind of go to the end of this chapter here. The rest of the stuff you can sort of like extra things practice and other things you can check. It was written regarding to the case studies. Yes, so I'd like to thank you for watching the video. I know that this created value for you and able to better understand the principles of marketing as it relates to pricing and understanding and capturing customer value. So, please click like on the video, that way it'll be pushed to the algorithm, that way more people will be able to view it and benefit from the video, as well as being educated and having information about it. If you haven't already, please click subscribe so you have access to all my videos on this channel, as I have a variety of different topics on this channel. And also, if you haven't already, please click the bell button so you'll be notified of all my future videos. I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I'd like to wish you a great day. Take care, and I'll talk to you in the next lesson, hopefully next Tuesday. Take care.